Welcome, guys, back to the I Love Wrestling podcast. I'm your host, as always, Justin Woolwine, and today we're welcome with UK's own Big Deal Dante. Man, I see you got some strap over the shoulder. Let us know a little bit about yourself, where the strap comes from, all that fun stuff, real quick.
Yep, current price heavyweight champion of the world of Herefordshire. Proud to represent the title. Always ready to fight any given moment, 24/7, 7 days a week. And it's a pleasure to be on your show. I'm looking forward to this interview.
Me too. I messaged you earlier and let you know, if anybody hasn't checked it out, go check out CCP Podcasting's interview with you as well. Phenomenal interview. Love Chris Page over there. And it really got me ready for this interview and excited for this interview. You got a nice story, an intriguing story. It's been a while since I've had a guy on the UK, actually in the UK, because I had Wolfgang on not too long ago, but he was in the States when we recorded. So this is fun. I'm excited.
Wolfgang is a bit of a bum, but he's a recognizable name, and you could learn a thing or two from me. But it's good that he's on your podcast and doing bits and keeping active.
Before like we really dive into your career and all things that you love about professional wrestling, would you like to shout out your social medias and even upcoming events where maybe we can see you defending that championship?
Of course, without hesitation, the easiest way to get a hold of Dante is Instagram at Big Deal Dante. That is where I am most active. That is where I am posting any events that I am going to participate in, which is frequent since people do need the money. They do need their names and the headlines. And that is what Dante brings to the table. He brings both the names and the headlines because that's where I am at the top. In terms of events we have coming up, 29th of November, which just so happens to be a very special day, being my birthday, that is going to be Prize Wrestling's biggest event of the year. Name to be decided, as I'm sure there is a name out there, as I'm too busy to look up the name myself because I've got so many plans and so many things to do. But 29th of November at Hereford, it will be roughly 4 to 5 p.m. start. And Dante has confirmed this is a exclusive for ILWPOD that Dante is going to be on that show, guaranteed.
Nice. I love an exclusive scoop. Any idea who you might be going against or who you might be defending that title against, maybe?
I mean, that is a pretty irrelevant question because the outcome of regardless who I'm against will be the same. Dante wins yet again 3-0 to retain the Prize Junior Heavyweight Championship. However, I'm going to say this, there's a lot of talented people in Prize Wrestling. That is undeniable. We have people like No Fun Done, Mad Dog Max, Chris Royals, the list goes on. But regardless, I think right now, I'm not going to go ahead and say it, that people are paying to see Dante. I've heard many, many chants. In fact, at the last Hereford show, the ending of the main event, there was someone who I'm not going to name because they don't deserve the clout that I can give them, but they were raising, the briefcase. Yet the fans are chanting my name. I'm not even joking. The fans are chanting my name, and I wasn't even in the building. That's how much people love me right now, and so I hear the love, and I promise you this: I'm gonna repay what I should have paid on that last show because I wasn't able to turn up when they need me most. The fans were chanting me, and I wasn't there. But I promise you this, I'm going to return that favor come the 29th.
I'm excited. I'll be paying attention. I'll be waiting to see what happens that night, watching you retain that championship. But here on ILW Pod, we try to start at the beginning as podcasters, as a wrestler, as wrestling fans. We all start as wrestling fans. Like it's just the natural origin. So when did you find professional wrestling or come across professional wrestling, and kind of what about the sport or the program made you fall in love with it?
Well, that's a very good question. And so I have to bring it back to the very, very start. I was very young, probably around the age of 5 or 6, and to keep a long story, which I've told a few times now, very short. My stepdad left, but whilst he left, there was a silver lining in that there was 7 or 8, I think I want to say 8 DVDs that he left at the house. But people don't know who DVDs are because I was going to put this title down because it's a bit heavy. It's a bit heavy on my shoulders, a heavy title. But for those who don't know what DVDs and cassettes are, there used to be these TVs that you had to slot actual DVDs and tapes into. And that was my memories of wrestling. I remember Raw 99. I remember ECW Living Dangerously. I can't remember the name of the pay-per-view, but it was Shane McMahon and Vince McMahon versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And they had a match for some sort of briefcase, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Those couple of pay-per-views were, I believe that was No Mercy. I could be mistaken. But those pay-per-views were what got me into wrestling. That was all I watched, no joke, religiously from the age of 7 to 12. And not to skip too far ahead, but I've been doing wrestling for just over a year and a half now. And I always like to say this, but it's kind of true the more I think about it, that realistically I've actually been doing it for 20 plus years, because those shows and those matches, more specifically, these people that I watch, like Chris Jericho, like Shawn Michaels, like Bret Hart, like The Rock, anyone of that ilk, it was imprinted in my brain, those kind of moves that I would see over and over again. And so I remember, I'll never forget my first training session. I knew immediately that this was meant for me, because there were so many things that just suddenly clicked like a puzzle, like it was so put together for me that I could just rewind in my mind these tapes that I'd seen over and over again and just reenact that, so to speak. And it came so naturally to me.
So, like, you kind of grazed over it kind of quickly. You mentioned names of Jericho, The Rock, Brett. Um, who were like your favorites though growing up? Who could you not like? They were on TV. You couldn't take your eyes off of it.
That's a very good question. And of course, we say Bret Hart back then, but also for me, more importantly, someone whose name I still think will never get the recognition it truly deserves because of the unfortunate circumstances. But Owen Hart, for me, when I was growing up again, someone who I was able to watch, man, he was an absolute joy to watch in the ring. So much passion, so much energy that he brought to that canvas. And for him to go as early as he did is unfortunate, but whilst he was alive, the amount of memories that he was able to make for not only himself, but of course the fans, someone that I truly honor and appreciate a lot for what he was able to do for me, um, as well as many other wrestlers, I'm sure. Someone else that I think a lot of people would kind of guess based off of my moveset, so to speak, would be Jeff Hardy. He is a risk taker. I like to feel like I'm a risk taker myself when I'm getting paid loads and loads of money, of course. I don't do risks for free. And then more recently, if we were to skip a bit further in time, we would go as recently as to say as Kenny Omega, because he is what I would say brought my love for wrestling back. I kind of lost it from 2013 to 2017, and then come New Japan and Bullet Club more specifically, when I got into that, Kenny Omega was a big reason as to why I was invested in wrestling again.
Definitely. Just I guess a little segue. I'm a huge Kenny Omega fan, especially that era, that the New Japan era. Kenny Omega. I don't think anything realistically topped it in wrestling at that time. What was your favorite? Two-part question. What was your favorite Kenny match from that era, that New Japan era, and what was your favorite Bullet Club T-shirt design?
That's a very good question. But before, I'm curious as to what you just said then about that being the best era of wrestling, or at least one of the peaks of his career, at least. And what would you say made that so special for yourself?
For myself, I'd never seen that style before. Kenny, something about, and realistically, I think it was Cody going to Bullet Club that really caught my attention, and then it made me go back and see what Bullet Club was. And like I enjoyed going back and watching Finn or AJ because I'd never seen AJ like that before either. But Kenny really just stuck out to me, and I've heard a lot of people compare him to like a 1980s like movie villain, and it's true. And then you see his style in the ring, and I'd never seen anything like it. So high flying, so hard hitting, like he just mixed the best styles of all my favorite aspects of wrestling and made it look real. Like sometimes you see high flying stuff, and it's like it looks overly choreographed, like which is fine. Like some people really like that, but Kenny made it look like it hurt, and I think that was my favorite part. And I hadn't seen a group in wrestling quite like the NWO in a long time, where they were bad guys, but they were so bad that they were cool. And I like it's always overdone, but they found a way to do it right, and I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, and so to add on to that, first of all, we talk about making look like there is no make believe when it comes to Kenny Omega. That is straight up. That's what makes it so good. That's what makes Japan so legit. Is they do not play games. They do not mess about. And I've not been there to confirm that yet. But if you didn't already know, that is one of my goals to wrestle in Japan for that reason, because those people are hard hitting. Those people respect the business like no one else in the UK possibly could, other than myself, of course, and would be a true honor to wrestle for them one day. But to answer your original question about what my favorite match was, well, that's obvious. Is Kenny Omega versus Okada. Any of the three, any of this original trilogy. would be my pick, because those are something that I feel like transcended wrestling in terms of it was something that was heard around the world. And at least for myself, I don't think that happened for New Japan at that time. There was yet to have been a match where it wasn't just in that kind of bubble of NJPW. And I think Omega helped transcend that into the what you would call WWE bubble, where people from that side of the wrestling world, so to speak, started paying attention more. Me being one of those people. To answer your other question in return, in regards to T-shirt, I actually couldn't give you an answer, since that is something that I'm not a big merch guy, in terms of I'm not going to be a fanboy for anyone else when I have my own merch, when I'm selling my own T-shirts. So the only T-shirt you should really be paying attention to is Dante's T-shirts. When they're not even out yet they will be one day, because that is what Dante is about, making money. And that also goes back into what you said about Kenny Omega, where there's not a style that you had seen since then, up until that point, excuse me. I'd like to believe that week in, week out, I am becoming that kind of wrestler myself. And if a lot of people can laugh at me or they can think I'm smug, but it's true. I always try and elevate myself. I'm always trying to learn and become a better wrestler, even though I'm already one of the best in the UK. I don't settle for the UK. I want to become one of the best in the world. And I'm going to stop at nothing to do that. I'm going to religiously, I study 7 days a week, and that is no exaggeration, 7 hours a week, because I need to prove that I am one of the best. And it's not for myself, it's for the fans. I've seen the UK scene, and I've seen a couple of these names like Zach Walker, Ray Connors, Romulus, these kind of people who are absolute bums, and they disgrace the UK with their wrestling. They make it an absolute joke. And so I'm here to bring the UK wrestling scene back to what it should have been, what it was back in 2014-15, when we had Zack Sabre Jr., when we had Noam Dar, when we had Daniel Bryan or Brian Danielson, whichever one it was at the time, when these kind of wrestlers were back in the UK doing their thing. I believe that was when the golden age of the UK wrestling scene was. And then I can then bring that to Japan.
Speaking of, I guess the golden age of UK wrestling, I feel like as a US wrestling fan, the UK never gets the light it deserves. We've seen many UK wrestling revolutions over the years, where the UK Indies or the UK wrestling scene has risen very high, and then whether that's an AEW or a WWE or these bigger promotions coming through and kind of just taking all the talent, it rips that, like, the, you know, takes all the talent away and makes it hard. Um, as somebody in the UK, what's it like for you being able to see these guys get the chance to be on a TV program and to make the big money? Um, and who are some of the guys that you've been able to see do that, that maybe you model yourself after, or would like to maybe not model yourself after, because I hate saying that, but like go down the road they help pave, if that makes sense.
Well, I could never model myself after anyone, because there is only one Dante. But to answer your question, there is someone who I would say that is, if I were to aspire to wrestle a certain type of way and be a certain individual, then currently right now that would be Pac of AEW. That man is an absolute machine, and you can tell by the way he looks. He is in the gym religiously, I'm sure. He is out there proving each and every single week why there is still talent in the UK. To bring it back a few steps, when you talk about these people that are currently in the UK as of 2025 going into 2026, the reason as to why I said a minute ago that it is in such a state as it is goes somewhat to what you said a minute ago about how certain things, high flying wise, but wrestling in general can look choreographed, look like they've been rehearsed. That's because they are. A lot of people these days don't actually know how to wrestle. These people just want to go in there and do their own moves and want to be other people. They want to imitate. They want to be the people they looked up to when they were 6, 7, 8 years old. And that is what is lost in wrestling, that magic that you no longer feel at times when you can look at a 20-minute match and fall asleep after 5, is because these people just do the same moves, the same exact chants, and the same different entrance, the same exact entrances on different weeks, on different nights, and different shows. And they think that no one notices. Well, I notice. I feel like the fans notice. And to magnify on that, I feel like that's why UK wrestlers are going to these AEWs and are going to WWEs, and very few are staying at Rev Pro and Progress and these promotions that can be great, is because they see that the UK scene itself is falling, is a shambles, and they know that in order to elevate themselves, they have to go abroad to America or to Japan, whatever the case may be, which is sorry, and it's sad for me to say. I don't like saying that. It's not something that I want to say, because I'm proud to be from the UK. I'm proud to have a wrestling scene in the UK be as big as it is. And where are you from, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm originally from Charleston, West Virginia, and right now I reside about an hour west of Chicago, Illinois.
Okay, yes, so straight away we can tell Chicago, Illinois, there is a very rich wrestling scene. Just from a couple of names off the top of my head, obviously the biggest one being CM Punk, but of course you have many more than that, I'm sure. Regardless of that, you can have a proud heritage in 2025. You can have a wrestler that you aspire to, well, not so aspire, I say more so be proud to represent your country, to represent your city, whatever the case may be. I don't think there are many people in the UK that can say that right now. I don't think that there's probably, you could count on one hand the amount of people, more specifically the amount of wrestlers that the UK have, that the UK people themselves would be proud to say that represent them. I mean, you probably think of Drew McIntyre or like a Zack Sabre Jr., Pac. A couple names come to mind, but again, there was much more even 5 years ago. There was a lot more names, and it just seems to be going down as the years go on.
So just I'm always curious as far as you know, all of us usually start off, like I said earlier, as wrestling fans, and then there's usually a moment or something that transitions, like you guys, to say, okay, I want to step on the other side of the guardrail or the barricade, whatever you want to call it, and I want to get in the ring, and decide to start training. What was that pivotal moment in your life that made you decide, hey, I want to do this? And how did you go about finding the right school for you? Because I know there's so many, especially nowadays. Like you hear the stories back in the day of how it was really difficult to find a school. Now they're everywhere. So what did that kind of what did that look like for you?
Well, that was a bit of luck. If I were to say that word, I don't believe too much in luck. I would more say skill meets opportunity. But in this case, we use luck. And that was the case, being as I was literally walking in a 9 to 5, and just so happened to see a poster on the wall that tries wrestling. Realized it was local soon after. Found myself training for them a bit before I injured my ankle. And to cut a long story very short, almost didn't make the first training session because mentally I wasn't prepared for it. I'd re-injured my ankle and I was going to give up. But kicked myself at the behind, said, you know what, if I don't do this, this is wrestling, this is something I've been passionate about my entire life, literally mostly in my entire life from the ages of 5 onwards. So I gave it a go, and here I am today, almost a year and a half later. Um, when it comes to wrestling in general, when it comes to beyond prize, though, I will say prize wasn't the factor. It wasn't the thing that made me want to do wrestling as much as it was wrestling itself. I mean, this is both the best and worst thing that can happen to wrestling in 2025 is that there are so many available options in order to how you can get into wrestling. There are training schools all across the UK for both better and worse, because that means that there are much more talented people getting into wrestling now, such as myself, that are naturally gifted at what I do. There are also many more bums that come into wrestling, and no joke, I've seen people who have one training session never to be seen again. They literally take one, I'm not going to call it a bump because I don't know what that term means, all these marks like to use those kind of terms, but I will call it a legit fall because what we do is real and that stuff hurts. And there's a reason for that, because those people, they don't return again. I'm no joke seeing it from plus year olds who thought it was easy, stepped into that ring and stepped straight back out, never seen again. Um, so to put it in a nutshell, Prize was my original beginning, but wrestling was always going to come to me in some way, shape, or form, and it just happened to be right place, right time.
So just speaking of Prize, how has Prize helped shape you maybe both personally and professionally?
You know what? I'm not going to say this because they pay me loads and loads of money. I'm going to say this because I have got a kind heart somewhere down there, but they are genuinely some of the nicest individuals that I have met. They have a great community. They have fans. They're extremely loyal. As I said earlier, they would chant my name regardless of the fact that I wasn't even in that ring, which till this day is something that I'm going to cherish for the rest of my life. I also have had fans hold signs up to me, signs up of my name, excuse me. And I just want to take a real second to stay on that, because that's something that Dante cannot get his mind around. The fact that there are kids that would legitimately be at their own house, writing my name down on a piece of paper to come show their support for me and stick it up in the air. That to me means a lot. Definitely not because I'm paying loads and loads of money, but it genuinely means a lot to me, the fact that there are fans that would do that. So Prize has got a great fan base. Our last Hereford show did over 200 people in the Richmond Club, Hereford. And this show is expected to do over 200 again, which again is not lost to me. If you would think about the room that you're in right now and try and fit 200 people in that room, I'm sure you'd feel very crowded very quickly. So that is a lot of people, and I'm looking forward to that show. But Prize in general, we're on a roll right now. We also do Evesham, we do Leicester, and we have recently done Ledbury for the first time. And at a first time show, that also did 70 people, which may not seem a lot to these fans that like to watch AEW and WWE, etc. But to think of a place that you've never seen wrestle before, and a place that's never had wrestling in over 5, 10 years, whatever it would have been, to do 70 people in the first show, that's a beginning point, and that's something that I am also proud of. Full Prize.
So I something that I try to touch on during the training process. I've heard it's not an easy transition. Some people struggle. Some people, fly right through it. Whether it's because they already have an athletic background or they've, done amateur wrestling or jujitsu, other martial arts, things like that. What were some of your biggest things that you struggled with during your training, and what are some things that maybe came easier to you?
That's a very hard question. Something that I struggled with a lot was being so damn good. I mean, come on, man. Like, it was so easy for me. It was so easy to be able to get into the ring. And honestly, people thought I'd been doing it 3, 4 years already. When I told them that I'd only been wrestling for a week and it was my first training session, they were dumbfounded. But if I were to have to give you an answer, I was obligated to give you an answer, then I would say it was the experience. It was listening to the crowd, because I believe, as I said before, the crowd are one of the most important aspects to wrestling. That's something that gets lost on a lot of people, and a lot of wrestlers more specifically. They blur out the crowd. They don't listen to it. They stick to what they're told to do, what they believe is right to do. And that is the complete opposite of what Dante does. Whenever I'm out there, there is always one ear to the crowd, no matter if it's better or worse, whether they're booing me or whether on the 29th they're going to be cheering me. I am always listening to the crowd. And that is something that you can't really prepare for in training. It's not something that you can rehearse. It's not something that you can study per se. You really just have to go out there and feel it. And that's why it's scary to be me right now, because the more matches I have and the more experience I get, I'm only going to get better, because I'm only going to be listening more. I'm only going to be honing in more on what they want, because that's what is important for them. And more importantly, it makes my bank account bigger.
Okay. Okay. So I told you earlier that I've had the likes of Wolfgang on here and some other UK talent, and throughout their stories, I've heard that unlike other independent scenes, that the UK indie scene is big on working together to help build each other up to grow the whole scene as a whole. Has that been your experience so far?
I will answer that question promptly, but before that, I do want to give a bit of credit to you, and it's not because you're paying me loads and loads of money to do this interview, but I will say it looked like you had, if I'm not mistaken, Eric Young on this podcast not too long ago.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and that must be a problem for you. And I have to relate that as someone, again, who I watched 2012 TNA when that was going through the UK. It was, I believe, I forget what channel it was on specifically, but it was on UK TV somewhere down the line, 2010, 2012. And it may have even been known as Impact at the time, I forget. But regardless, Eric Young is someone who I admire and respect massively. So I want to say congratulations for that.
Thank
Back
you.
to your original point, which was what? Sorry.
So the UK indie scene, I've heard through other guys that have grown up through there, that they work together with other members of the wrestling community to help raise that scene. Has that been your experience?
Okay. Um, that's a very tough question to answer. Being myself, being as talented as I am, I feel like people sometimes they want to cushy up to me. They want to become friends with Dante because they know that's where the money is, because they know that's where the biggest match is going to be. But if I were to take a step outside of my own shoes and answer it from a completely unbiased perspective, which I already do anyway, but for this, I'll be extra unbiased and say that that is true. I feel like a lot of people here in the UK are trying to build the scene back up. Like I said, it is currently in a organization, a bit of a shuffle. There are a lot of moving pieces of the puzzle, so to speak, and I feel like people understand that, which is why they're trying even harder to make it a prosperous place again. It's crazy when you sit back and look at it for a minute, the amount of talent that has come from the UK, being a small place as it is, when you only have England, Wales, Ireland, and the other country that I forget because it's so irrelevant. But when you look at the amount of talent that has come out of that place and how small it is in comparison to places like America, like Japan, like Canada, like all these other huge places, the amount of talent that has come from the UK is phenomenal. And I feel like that is something that we are trying to build back up. That is something that is in the works. And if you were to look at the UK scene in 3, 4 years' time, talking 2030, I'm sure we can look back at it and say that it was a work in progress and it is now fulfilled. In 2030, there will be many more talents such as Dante.
Okay. You know, Dante, so far you've been in this, I believe you said a year and a half, just under 2 years, something like that.
Yes, sir.
So far throughout your career, what match or moment are you most proud of so far?
Well, the answer would actually be very recent. In fact, I did a show at PWL Birmingham not too long ago, maybe as close as I want to say a month ago. And actually happened to be against two absolute bums and Lanks called John Terry and Doc. Can you hear
We're
me?
back. Yes, sir.
Okay, we're all good.
Yes, sir.
So as I was saying, there's two individuals that are lanky and absolute idiots, but nonetheless respect them for what they did in that ring in that night, that being John Terry and Doc O'Reilly. And I was in a tag team match, of course, against them. My partner didn't help me whatsoever since we lost that night, and it was all on him. But what I will say is this, that was one of the most fun experiences I've had. Most definitely not because it was the biggest paycheck that I'd had in my career so far, but more importantly because the fans were with it the entire way. The fans enjoyed every second of it. That is no exaggeration. From minute 1 to minute 15 and 39 seconds, which the match was, it was an absolute fire fest. It was an absolute chaos. There was no word really to describe what happened that night. There was Nemo involved. There were pumpkins involved. There was kendo sticks. There was a fire extinguisher. There was referees throwing out clotheslines. It was all going on in that match, and that is what I believe wrestling is about. You have to take it seriously, but you also have to have a bit of fun in it. Sometimes you have to remember where wrestling is in that unique space where it's not everything is about titles, and not everything is about beating the guy up. Sometimes it's about giving the crowd what they want. Because I was paid such a big paycheck on the night, Dante was willing to put it all on the line and give the fans what they wanted.
Okay. I like it. So, you know, you are the current prize junior heavyweight champion. What was going through your mind throughout that match when you won the title, and how did you feel walking out champion?
That is a feeling that is really undescribable. You can't really prepare yourself for that as much as you try to. Just out of curiosity, have you had any wrestling experience yourself? Or
No professional wrestling experience. I did amateur wrestle in high school, and I there's been 2 or 3 times I've been on the break of training, and then medical reasons I had to uh, divert, and now we're here. So
was
this
there
is about the
a specific
extent.
moment for you?
This is about the extent of my professional career, I guess.
Do you feel like you ever reached that moment that you were looking for in terms of that? Or
um, I you know when I started the podcast, I made a list, a long, very long list of guests I'd like to get on here, and I've been fortunate to check some of the names off, but there were three, technically four names that I consider like holy grail videos, if that makes sense. One is CM Punk. I haven't got him yet. Another one is Hulk Hogan, which I will never do. He passed away. Which, to a little side note, came close. Didn't work out. Didn't get the you know hash things out before he passed. Unfortunately, but I'd say the moment so far that's made me feel validated in the little over a year that I've done this is having the Hardy Boys on, because I grew up a huge Jeff and Matt Hardy fan. I've jumped off houses, watching Jeff Hardy and things like that. So if there's a moment, that's probably it. Do I feel like I've reached my peak or where I want to be? Nowhere near. I'm so far away from it. And I see that you're very confident in yourself, and I'm also very, I don't show it a lot, but I'm very confident in my abilities and what I'm able to do. And this is one of those journeys I don't think stops until I'm in the same conversation as podcasters like Chris Van Fleet or Conrad Thompson or above them. I'm huge fan of both of them. I watch a lot of their stuff, but my goal is to be, not only be in that conversation, but to be just above that, if that makes sense.
Yes, and so fans, Dante will translate all of what he just said very put for you. This bum has not made enough money and he wants to make even more money in 2026. But that is a respectful answer nonetheless. What I will say in regards, firstly, to Hulk Hogan, that is very tragic and unfortunate to hear about the situation that unfolded. This is something that, as to why I don't really pay attention to what fans say on either which way these days, because you're somewhat on the fence and you somewhat understand what goes on behind the scenes of wrestling. And that's something that, if you're a purely speculative fan, you will never understand just how things can change so quickly in wrestling, and how things 1 minute can seem so certain, the next can be disappearing. Um, in regards to the Hardys, like I said before, Jeff and Matt, both extremely talented individuals. Some people, I should say, who again I looked up to growing up, if I were to say that word. If you actually, I'm not sure if you've heard of this. Have you heard of Backyard to Big Time? Have you heard of that DVD?
No, I've not.
Yeah, that was one of my earliest. Again, back talking about it wasn't. It was more. I think it was actually a CD. Correct me. Excuse me. It wasn't a DVD. It was a CD. But talking again there of like 2006, 2005. I want to say that was one of their first they released, as far as I'm aware. Back when I believe Jeff Hardy was called High Voltage in his
Okay.
backyard wrestling days. I'm not sure about Matt, but that was a really cool CD to watch. And nonetheless, in regards to that, something that I will say is that if you haven't already, and I want to give this man a shout out because he has messaged me personally, which he didn't have to do. The guy is extremely busy doing artwork for Jeff Hardy, doing artwork of numerous things for numerous people, is Falco. I believe it's Falco Leischke on Instagram. If you haven't already heard that name, then get to hear it. That guy is a phenomenal artist. He has immortalized many paintings of Jeff Hardy throughout his entire career, and he is one of the biggest names in art right now. And one of my goals actually is to one day get ring gear done by the man himself, done by Falco himself. I've talked to him already about it, and it is something in the works that will happen one day. But just wanted to shout out him because he is an absolute phenomenal individual, extremely humble. He doesn't have to act the way he does with the amount of interactions he gets online and the amount of attention he gets online, but he is extremely nice guy. So yeah, just wanted to say that as well.
Definitely. Um, I've heard you on other podcasts, and we kind of talked about it briefly before we got on here, about kind of like the pros and cons of social media in professional wrestling. We grew up um, seeing the evolution of social media technology really unfold in front of our eyes, and there's a lot of benefits to it. I mean, you look at it, it's easier for us to reach out to each other and get things like this happening. It's easier to promote our stuff. um, what's been your experience utilizing social media to help get the name Big Deal Dante out to the world? And what are some of the cons, the negatives that you've had to experience um, on social media?
Well, I'm sure this is a thing that has been said before, but I'll say it again since it rings true. Is the best thing about the internet is everyone has an opinion. The worst thing about the internet is everyone has an opinion, and that's something that does ring true. When it comes to my skin, I feel like I have hard skin. Fortunately for those situations, being as popular as I am and rising as I am, there are a lot of people that want to say a lot of things about Dante here in 2025, and through my experience personally, for better and for worse, and I always try and take silver linings out of situations. It's not unknown in my story at this point in time that growing up through primary school, through high school, I was bullied for the way that I looked, for the way that I talked. That is what it is, and it's in the past. But what I will say is that it made me a much stronger person come to the internet side of things. Um, there are very few things that have been said in my time that really affect me in any sort of negative way. I'm really my own worst enemy when it comes to any side of mental stuff. When it comes to being able to think about what I can do better, I'm my worst enemy because I'm always criticizing myself relentlessly. So there's nothing really that's been said online when it comes to that side of things that is going to put a dent in my confidence. I'm doing it to myself on a daily basis. However, I will say on the positive side of things, um, like I said before, it enables me to study even more. It's no joke. I study 7 hours a week at least minimum, and I believe that has been by far the biggest factor as to why I can improve as a wrestler. If you've not already seen some of my matches, and something that I'll say right now, if you never see me do the exact same, and there's nothing wrong with this, by the way, just to clarify, having the blueprint for your matches, the biggest example being John Cena, who a lot of fans like to say has the 5 moves of doom. Well, some new shock fans, John Cena is one of the most talented wrestlers in the world, believe it or not. And he is capable of much more than just those 5 moves as you would have seen the last 3 or 4 months of his run. It's just fans get complacent and they get really agitated when rescues me do the same moves, but that's because they're masters of his moves. I believe it was Bruce Lee who said something along the lines of, "Don't fear the man who knows 1,000 moves, but no, fear the man who has done the same one move 1,000 times." And I believe that I do both. I'm again extremely talented. I can do many moves, and I can do them 1,000 times over to an extremely high level. So fans don't really have anything to say on that side of things when it comes to online stuff. They really just talk about how I look, which I've already been dealing with. So when it comes to the wrestling side of things, I'm good right now. And what I will say, one more thing is this: as much as the negativity has been seen by me and continues to be seen by me, it fuels me. It makes me stronger. It motivates me more to win more championships, to wrestle for more places, to get paid to wrestle for more places. More importantly, because that is ultimately the sign that you're doing something right. I believe that if you're successful, like yourself, having the likes of Eric Young on, having the like of Warsong, I'm sure you've had a few haters, a few people that told you X, Y, and Z, that you're small time, that you're this and that. I'm sure it's fueled you as well.
Definitely, absolutely, every day. The the haters always are the loudest, but they also give you the most fuel. Is something I've learned. Um, you mentioned, you know, your training and your studying 7 hours minimum. Um, when you're partaking in your study session, we'll call it, what what is the main source? Like what do you go to get your head right and to make sure you're consuming the right content?
That's a very interesting question, and that is something that relates to what I believe a lot of wrestling is about, which I don't think fans quite well, and since it's been a thing since the dawn of wrestling, and that is everyone has an opinion. More importantly, wrestling is such a heavily opinion-based thing. I always bring up this example, not to divert too much, but John Moxley is one of the most well-known names in in the wrestling scene currently. For better and for worse, there are a lot of people think he's one of the worst wrestlers currently on TV, and there are a lot of people that think he's one of the best. And that goes down to Dante then, where it's a case of I'm only going to watch what I believe to be the best wrestling, and by extension, the best wrestlers. So we look at people like Zack Sabre Jr., people like Brian Danielson, people like who I like to think are extremely underrated, like Leo Rush or Noam Dar. These kind of people who I've been studying recently. And then we talk about OGs, people who were before me and who helped pave the way before I was even born. People like Johnny Saint, people like Jim Duggan, people like that who were, again, it's something that you'd really have to look at their matches and really be able to appreciate then. What they were doing was ahead of their time. Um, and you could call it innovators, you could call them masters of their craft, but at the end of the day, I believe that what is old becomes new because their stuff hasn't been done for over 20, 30 years in some cases, and Dante likes to bring it back every now and then.
Absolutely. So, we brought up 2026 a couple times in this conversation. What are some of your biggest goals for 2026, and where do you really want to see yourself come December of next year?
That's a very interesting question, and the answer is very, very simple from me, myself, and I. There is only one answer, and that is to make even more money, that is to wrestle for even more promotions, that is to bring more and more eyes to the UK scene, because the UK scene is Dante. Dante is the UK scene. I am up and coming for a reason. People don't know yet the name, but they will one day because I am going to keep on going. You can look back at this conversation in 5 years' time. There have been a few people, Tiger Shah, Caminero Merck, these kind of people who have come and gone, you probably wouldn't know. That's because they retired before I'd even started. There are a lot more wrestlers who will come and go past me, but I promise you this is not something that I am going to be a flash in the pan. This is not something that I'm going to skip in and out of. This is something that I'm in for the long game. This is something that in 10, 15 years' time, I will only continue to get better and I will only be hungrier. And that's because I've seen what it takes to get to the top level. I've seen what it takes to become one of the best. And I am relentless. I am hungry. I want this better and more than ever. I'm going to keep on going until, like I said, the first goal being, if we're going to talk and take it step back a second, the original goal was to wrestle in my hometown. That was the only goal that I had. Then I achieved that within 3 months. Then the goal became I want to become a champion. I want to get some gold around me. Then I became prize wrestler of the year 2024, if I get my words out. Then after that, I became a champion, prize junior heavyweight champion. I reached that goal. Then I wanted to wrestle in front of 500 people. I achieved that goal at a carnival in Wolverhampton. Then I want to wrestle in front of 1,000 people. These goals, I keep on knocking them and I can't keep up. And I keep getting paid more and more money. It's becoming hard to think of goals that I can achieve in such a quick amount of time. So that's what Dante wants for 2026, is more money to wrestle in front of bigger crowds and to do it in Japan, Canada, America. Does not matter because, like I said, wherever Dante is, fans follow.
So, I mean, you briefly grazed over it a little bit, but just to really hone in on it, where specifically would you like to work in the future?
So if I were to talk local, because that is where I am currently and that's where the money is being made currently, there is a very specific, which I know is eyeing me up, which I know is talks are being had behind the scenes and checks are being brought up and then ripped to pieces because the amount isn't big enough for Dante. So we're going to add a couple of zeros and then talk about it again. But Southern Valley Wrestling, that is an up-and-coming promotion which have not had their first yet. Up and coming, and I believe if I were to take a guess, sometime late February. But that is a company which Dante is eyeing up because I know that is a company that needs Dante. As a company that if they want to start with a bang, there is only one man for the job, and that is a big deal. If we were to talk a bit more, like I said, worldwide, then we are going to have to go back to Japan because the ultimate goal is NJPW. I've said before, but back in 2018-17, when we was talking about Bullet Club, that is what sparked my second love of wrestling. I had fallen out of love of wrestling because it was so boring, because it was so dire. And Bullet Club and Kenny Omega, these kind of figures of Carter and the like, brought me back into wrestling. They were what sparked my interest. And more of that, actually, more specifically, was Chris Jericho. When he went to Japan, he was, as people know, an innovator of what gave New Japan second life, what gave them the relevancy they needed to get back on their feet. And that is something that I believe I could bring to New Japan. I believe I could also bring more eyes from the UK over there. I believe I could re-innovate. I believe I could do something that has not been done before, and that is bring a UK title over to there and defend it, and then bring one of their titles over here and defend it and go back over to Canada, America. Like I said, I'm wanting to bring titles all over the country. I'm not just going to be one of those people that has a title, then decides to keep it hostage in the country for a year straight, then only to relinquish it because I didn't defend it enough times. I'm going to be a fighting champion wherever the case is. That is something that regardless if I get booed or cheered, I'm always going to be fighting. I'm always going to be wrestling. And I'm going to be bringing titles from one company to the other because I believe is a rising tide raises all ships. And I believe that is what Dante is the best at.
I love it. You bring up going to New Japan as a main goal. Is going there something you'd like to maybe go and just be on the card, or would you like to go and maybe train in the New Japan dojo, work your way up the ranks to be in the same talks of the likes of your Okadas and things like that?
Well, if you were to ask a more intelligent question, then you would already know the answer. That if we were to be talking about Dante, which we are right now in this current conversation, being as I am on the podcast to you, then there is no need for me to work my way up the ranks. I should already be up the top. I should already be in the main event of NJPW. But if we were to talk about me working my way to entertain that very, very silly idea, then I would say that is something that I would enjoy the experience of because it would humble me. It would bring me back down a peg, which is what I need right now. This is something that a lot of wrestlers aren't. They're too scared of. They're too scared to be humbled. They think they're on cloud nine 24/7. Dante is there to be humbled. I'm waiting for competition. This is something that fans don't realize. I talk all the smack. I'm waiting for people to respond. I'm not someone who likes to talk, and then have no actions follow up. I'm someone who likes to be humbled. I'm someone who likes competition. I'm someone who likes to be driven to my limits because that is the way you become the best wrestler. You do not become by wrestling bums 24/7. You become the best by facing the best. So that is what Dante looks to do. When it comes to my place in the card, this is something that I have somewhat experience in the UK, and that does not matter where I am on the card. And again, it's no exaggeration when I say this. Wherever I am in the card, be main event, whether it be the first match, whether it be the first half main event, which by the way is a BS because there is no such thing. There is only one main event. WrestleMania sucks for the fact that it has two main events. That is an absolute load of BS. There should only ever be one main event, and real fans know that. But the fact is, wherever I'm in the card, that's where the fans are going to be paying the most attention because that is where the biggest reactions and the best match is going to be had.
Fair enough. I got two more questions for you, then I'm gonna let you go. Um, do you have any big dream match scenarios?
First of all, those two questions are going to cost an extra lump sum of money each per question. So I'll check my bank account later for that to be sure. But to answer your question, I'm actually not a big fan of dream matches. I'm not a big fan of creating this like a lot of these wrestlers seem to be because that to me is a fan mentality. And if I'm to consider myself one of the best or up and coming, then I'm not going to consider myself having dream matches with these kind of people. But if I were to answer your question, since you're paying money to answer the question, I would say there is someone like if we were to look in the history books and like I bring his name up before, Owen Hart. That is someone who I would have loved to have wrestled. That is someone, like I said, was extremely passionate about what he did. If we were to go more current, then someone in the UK scene currently and someone who was trying his best to bring up the UK scene to the standards they once had would be Leo Rush. That's someone who, for lack of a better term, is again someone who I could say inspired me. Someone who I could say has had a surge in my heart and my desire to become a better wrestler. But I've seen what he has done. I've seen what he's been through. His recent surgery was just actually so happened to be on the same shoulder that I had injured my shoulder on, that being the left shoulder. I'm sure what he did to mine, did to his. I separated my shoulder by jumping off the ladder because I got paid a bunch of money and I was an absolute idiot that night. But Leo Rush would be someone who I currently think I could have a match with.
Okay. Last question, then I'll let you go. Obviously, I'm gonna put yourself at the top of this list of up and comers in the UK scene. But if you had to, maybe educate me on who five other up and comers were in the UK scene, just so I, maybe help me scout and get more eyes on this scene, who would you recommend or say are the top five up and comers, not counting yourself, because obviously you're at the top of the list in the UK?
That's a great question, and I'm happy to answer, and I'm obliged to answer so long as that bank account keeps getting filled up. We'll start off with Dynamite, who I believe is misguided currently in his fantasy of obliging every single wish that the fans request of him, and he is a crowd pleaser, which is only going to cost him matches, which is only going to cost him titles. But if he were to get his mindset out of that and focus purely on wrestling, that's someone who I believe could go extremely far, takes the business extremely seriously, does Jesse Dynamite. Um, we get two other athletes who have very big muscular bodies but have very small brains, but I respect them nonetheless, that being, like I said before, Ray Connors and Romulus, who were in a tag team called The Standard. Those two individuals, very young, very talented, very hungry. If we were to look more local again, then I would look at someone like the name of Ring Gremlin, someone who I've wrestled with and against in the past, someone who was a veteran of the game, I believe 35 years plus, if I'm not mistaken, in terms of his age, not in terms of experience. Though if you saw him wrestle, you believe he'd been wrestling 35 years because that's how good he is. And then if we were to look finally a bit more local, there is an individual who is up and coming, like you said before. And again, it doesn't matter how many times you say it, I'm going to say it because it needs to be known by the fans as Big Deal Dante. You can look at any of my Instagram reels, any of my matches, and you will find absolute banger after banger because I'm constantly reinnovating and I'm constantly improving. And the more you follow me, the more you will see me improve. You will see that story continue to unfold. At the end of it, there will only be success.
I agree 100%. Dante, thank you so much for joining us. This podcast has been made a big deal by you being on here, and I appreciate that 100%. Thank you for being able to celebrate the 175th episode of the I Love Wrestling podcast. Just in case for some reason they wasn't listening, because I was talking at the beginning of this, you wasn't talking. Would you like to shout out your social medias one more time, just to, just in case I deterred them at the beginning?
I would do, but before I do that, I would like to say this, and it's not because you're paying me loads and loads of money to do this. I would like to say this because I am a genuinely nice person, have a heart of gold, and that is the fact that I would say you are inspiring to people that are on the podcast side. You should be proud of yourself for what you've done, the work that you've created, for having someone such a big name like myself on the podcast is a monumental occasion, 175, and that is inspiring people, like I said, of that similar ilk who are trying to up and come and I'm a big name in the podcasting world. Like you said, Chris Van Vliet, someone who, by the way, I respect and I think is a phenomenal person to aspire to be. But respect your work, respect what you've done, and most importantly, respect the amount of money you're going to send me at the end of this interview. But if you were to look at my social medias, once again, it would be Instagram mainly at Big Deal Dante. Do have a TikTok which I post not because I want to, but because these great fans like to see TikTok and use TikTok so much. So we would look at Dante Wrestler on TikTok if you were to follow that. And one more thing in terms of what I have to say when it comes to wrestling, in the grand scheme of things, I can talk a lot of smack, I can say what I want to, but ultimately, there is only one thing that matters in wrestling in 2025 and contradictory to how I've been this entire interview, and that is feed what you want to see grow. That is to be nice to people who you want to be nice to, and no need for the negativity in the grand scheme of things. I can talk a lot of rubbish, but it's because I get paid loads of money to do it. If I was getting paid no money, I would not be saying these things. Ultimately, I want to see wrestling grow. Ultimately, I want to see the wrestling fan base long and make wrestling big again because we had that boom in 1990 through to 1999, kind of slowed down a bit and sped up again. And I feel like we need more of that in 2025. I feel like you said, technology is such a big thing in 2025, and we need to use it for the greater good. There are so many ways to access so many different forms of social media, so many different forms of wrestling. So if I was to give one more piece of advice, and this is free of charge, you don't have to pay me for this, is be nice and feed things that you want to see grow. Don't feed the negativity because they're only no good unless you're getting paid for it, such as am I.
Sounds good, Dante. With that said, I'm gonna leave the door open. You ever want to come on for part two? Obviously, like you said, I will make out the big bucks for that one. We'll throw out the check, throw the couple zeros on there. But I'll leave the door open if that's something you are wanting to do.
I certainly look forward to it.